Good. How are you?
Doing well.
How's your week been?
It's been pretty good so far. Yeah, just
Yeah,
some meetings yesterday, but I got a lot going on.
great. Yeah, we have a big fun week this week.
We do. Yeah. Looking forward to the party on Thursday. That should be fun.
Me too. I'm really excited. I'm actually going to Switzerland next week.
Really? What are you going to Switzerland for?
Gonna go snowboarding.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, going to the
Fun.
Alps for a little bit. It'll be fun. So
Are you just going with Jake or some friends?
yeah, just going with Jake,
Cool.
having a nice little romantic getaway,
It's
as
very
they
romantic in Switzerland. Yeah.
say. Yeah, it'll be cool. I'm really excited. We'll eat a lot of cheese. We'll do a lot of snowboarding. It's gonna be really fun.
Nice.
Cool. Well, it looks like some people are joining. So, good morning, good afternoon. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. My name is Kenzie, and I'm on the marketing team at dYdX. And today we are joined by our CEO and founder, Antonio, for another installment of our AMAs. So, Antonio, I will pass it to you to just give a little very brief background on yourself before we hop into the questions.
Cool. Yeah. So I'm Antonio, the founder and CEO of dYdX. Been doing this for about 6 or 7 years now. Before dYdX, I was an early engineer at Coinbase. At dYdX, we are the leading platform for trading of decentralized crypto derivatives. And the big thing that we've launched recently is the dYdX chain a few months ago. And excited to continue developing around that. Have some exciting updates to share and excited to take all your questions.
Totally. So that first question is kind of on the point. So yesterday we released our 2024 product roadmap. So can you walk us through some of the goals and the items on that roadmap, and then maybe a little bit of an expected timeline?
So there's two major goals we have on the roadmap right now for what we're developing. The first is more straightforward, so I'll go through that one first. Really, when we released the software around the dYdX chain a few months ago, we thought of that as an MVP, minimum viable product, and something that we're still really excited about and think is a great product, but we feel we can push the bounds on what's possible with the UI, the trading experience, the reliability that can be offered through the platform a lot over the next 6 months. So that's going to be a major focus. This is just things, some of which sound a little less sexy, but are really important, like reliability, for example, how efficiently are stops executing. That's a really big point of focus. Things like just generally fixing a lot of bugs with different flows, like onboarding in some cases, things like new features around the core trading experience, like reduce only orders, like isolated margin, and a lot of other things like that. So that's going to be a really big focus. The next thing, and something that I'm really personally excited about, is we're moving towards permissionless market listings on dYdX. And what we mean by this is anybody with the dYdX chain software will be able to come and add any markets that they would like to on the platform. So the way it works right now on dYdX is, of course, the chain is run in a decentralized way, and the dYdX token holders get to vote on whatever is added to the platform. And that's pretty good. That's awesome, right? It means that the users really are in control of the platform and can vote on whatever they want to add through token voting. This takes that a step further in the sense that anybody can add whatever they want to the platform without a vote. And that's something that's really positive and really exciting, really just getting dYdX to the place that's more similar to like a Uniswap. So on Uniswap, right, as everyone knows, anybody can go to Uniswap, add any market that they want to trade. And that's just on their software. And that's how we want it to be on dYdX as well. So this is going to be kind of built out in parts over the next few months. One of the first things that we have to build around this is isolated margin. So this is specifically allowing the risk of any individual market to not affect the risk of the platform overall. So just allowing the margin and the risk of that market to be isolated. This is really important because it allows assets that are much more financially risky to still be traded on dYdX. The reason why the platform can't be as aggressive right now with the types of things that it lists is because any new asset, if it's really risky, kind of affects the overall risk profile of the entire protocol because everything's cross margined. Cross margin is just a fancy word for the margin and the risk is all commingled between all these different assets. Once there's isolated margin, then you can add pretty much anything and the risk will just be isolated to that market. So it'll enable probably like 50 to 100 potential markets to be added to dYdX, which is the state we're in right now, to thousands and potentially more. You can really add kind of whatever you want. So after that, we're really excited to be moving towards permissionless markets. That'll hopefully be coming sometime in 4 to 6 months from now, potentially sooner, but we'll see how much progress we make around that. We're also potentially open and ideating on things like automated market makers or vaults. So this would be a place where anybody sort of in a Uniswap, or I think people understand what this is generally for DEXs, but as people probably know, dYdX for a long time has been focused on order books, and we still are. And we think that's the best way to do trading for these professional assets, especially for more popular liquid pairs. But for longer tail assets and for things like markets that are newer, I do really think that AMMs can be valuable. And I've always said this. So we're basically thinking about whether we want to have those on dYdX to supplement order books for liquidity and long tail assets and for new markets. So there's a lot of stuff that's coming, but TLDR, we're really going to improve the quality of the product over the next 6 months quite a lot. Really are listening to users, hear your feedback there, and really are going to try to take the UI and core trading experience to a place that's best in class, and then combine that with being able to trade anything on dYdX. So both much more number of things that can be added, much more risky things that could be added, and added in a way where it's just the end user being able to trade whatever they want. So I'm excited about that vision, and that's what we're going to be building for the next 6 months.
Yeah, totally. That's really exciting. So that kind of like spawned a couple questions for me. So first one is the reason that everything's cross-margined why there is a governance process now? And how does that process change when, like with permissionless markets, how does that process change?
So that's a big reason right now. And yeah, like I was mentioning before, you do have to be careful about the risk parameters of a new market that if you're adding them to cross margin. So there has to be some check behind that. And right now that's governance votes. Isolated markets does have a lot of interplay with permissionless markets. So we do feel like that's something that needs to be built before permissionless markets exist on dYdX. Just so once there's kind of no more checks and imbalances anymore, the margin of those markets can be isolated. So yeah, they are pretty related, and we'll basically just tack on permissionless markets after we have isolated.
Cool. Okay. And then what is the lift here to get liquidity to be kind of more of an AMM type situation?
So we're still thinking about how we want to do this exactly, and likely we'll build it in a way where the AMMs are just quoting on the order book. So it won't be like a totally separate market. It won't be like a totally separate liquidity mode, but there will exist. We're thinking likely right now vaults for each market, which users can deposit into, and then those vaults will just place quotes on the order book in a programmatic way. So an automated market maker, basically. And we're really thinking again of these AMMs being valuable for bootstrapping liquidity on a market. One of the really core advantages of dYdX is we do have a really robust market of market makers. So we have a lot of these market makers. They can provide deep liquidity, can provide really tight quotes, and just a better profile of liquidity than you'll find on an AMM. And that's awesome. We don't want to lose that. But I do think it does make sense to supplement those with AMMs because it's hard to build liquidity on long tail markets. It's hard to build liquidity on new markets. We've seen that play out time and time again really well on places like Uniswap and a lot of other DEXs now, where a lot of times those places are the first place a token starts to trade. And we want that for dYdX as well. So we really think that enabling everybody to be a market maker for these places in which it makes sense and where these AMM pools can actually be quite profitable, then we're really excited about that being an addition to the product. And then kind of those markets, if it's like a new market, then it'll probably start with an AMM, and then more professional liquidity providers will come in over time if and when that market becomes more popular.
Totally. That makes sense. I think that someone in the chat asked basically like how do permissionless markets address liquidity without having stale pairs? And I think that that's kind of the answer that you've just said right there is having these AMM style markets, at least at the beginning, right?
Yeah, that's exactly how we're thinking about the early stages of liquidity in terms of how does dYdX not have stale markets. So there'll also be some parameters around when markets get delisted, which will hopefully be more programmatic in places that could be governance deciding to delist certain markets as well. But really, the goal there is to just to not have things that people don't want to trade anymore, and then have a final settlement process that's fair and makes sense for those markets.
What's the reason why you wouldn't want to have stale markets? Like, does it cause a problem in any sort of way?
There are performance considerations with having more markets. So, like the chain has to figure out what the Oracle prices for all these markets are. It has to do collateralization checks, liquidation checks for all the accounts that have positions in those markets. Perhaps there's market makers quoting. So, that's one of the big reasons is performance, and just wanting to keep that optimal for the things people do want to trade. Maybe some secondary considerations around just making sure the markets on that are on dYdX are high quality in general. But that can also be solved more at kind of the front end and client level. So it's not a huge problem, but it's something we want to address more upfront.
Cool. Okay, that makes sense. So next question. I know we kind of talked about like what the product roadmap looks like for dYdX chain, but maybe what are some of the goals that you guys have, just in general, like maybe metrics you want to hit or things that you find would mean a successful chain?
So the big metric that we're still continuing to focus on is onboarding users to the dYdX chain. I had been mentioning before about how I've been quite pleased with the amount of volume that we've had on dYdX v4 so far. So I think that's in a really good place. On the active users side, I think there's around 12 to 1500 or so. So that's not quite as high as it was on V3 yet. So I do think that that could be increased a good amount. And really, the goal there is to just build a great product and get the product to the place where it is best in class on the trading side. And talked about how we plan to do that over the next 6 months. So those two things I would say are the biggest metrics. And generally, the way we try to track trading volume is more on a percent of the market basis as well. That's something that I really find more motivational and honest than kind of the absolute amount of trading volume that happens on a platform, just because it varies quite a lot based on market conditions. So that's a little hard to tell whether the platform is doing a good or bad job if you're just looking at the absolute numbers. Like the numbers may be down, but so might be the market. If you're looking at things on a percent basis, then it becomes a lot more clear. Are you growing or shrinking compared to your competitors? And I think the dYdX chain is around 1% or so of all crypto derivatives trading volume. Obviously, most of that continues to be on centralized exchanges. So growing that over time is one of the main objectives.
Okay, cool. Yeah. And someone asked, I'm pretty sure that this is the same thing we just talked about, but they're using the term vault. So I want to make sure that we're asking the right question. So someone asked, is there any plans for vaults and protocol owned market making like on Hyperliquid? And is that kind of the
Yeah.
same thing we've been talking about?
So
Just
that's basically what I was talking about with the AMMs as well. And we're still thinking about the way we want to implement those. Likely, the first thing that we'll implement will not be the same as Hyperliquid in the sense that you're giving somebody else the access to quote based on your capital. It'll more just be a programmatic thing that's enshrined in the protocol that's quoting for you, more like a Uniswap or something like that. So that's likely where we'll start, but we may expand from there.
okay, cool. Um, and okay, another question is dYdX planning to integrate Slinky by Skip protocol? And then maybe you could also talk about some other integrations that the team has done with Skip.
Yeah, so just for some context on this, for those who aren't familiar, Skip Protocol, which is a team that's building Oracle solutions in Cosmos, has recently come out with this product called Slinky, which is something that can be integrated into various Cosmos chains and is a more performant way to get Oracle prices. So we are very excited about this. We've been talking with Skip for a while about this, and very likely will integrate that pretty soon. And the goal of this would be to get more performant Oracle prices, i.e., they update more frequently and with greater precision. And then also it improves the performance of the chain a lot. And then thirdly, actually, which is probably the most important thing, it enables oracles on much more assets. So when combined with things like isolated margin and permissionless markets, I'm really excited about how many markets and the diversity of markets that this will enable for dYdX. So this isn't 100% finalized, but we're pretty deep into talks with Skip on integrating Slinky, and a lot of that work is basically starting really soon. So excited about that.
Yeah, what is Slinky providing that dYdX oracles don't already have the capacity to do?
So it's a bit nuanced, and at a high level, the oracles still work in very much the same way. The way oracles work right now on dYdX is there's the dYdX chain, right? And there's all these validators that make up the dYdX chain. And each one of these validators is responsible for putting the oracle prices that they source from places like Binance, Coinbase, Uniswap, wherever the spot venue is, and then putting that information into the chain. So that's how it works right now. On Slinky, it works the same way in that the validators are still the ones putting the Oracle prices into the chain itself. And the reason this is exciting and really good is because the Oracle sources are as decentralized as the chain itself. There's a lot of validators, and now there's a lot of Oracle reporters in this network as well, which isn't something that exists on most other platforms. So with Slinky, the really big difference, and it's a bit technical, but is that it uses something called vote extensions in Cosmos. And this is just a more efficient way to store data in the blockchain. I won't go too much into the technical details right now, but we can talk about that later if there's more questions there. But it basically improves the performance of oracles quite a lot. And this is quite important because of the reason I was saying before, in that it enables many more markets to be potentially listed on dYdX because they have oracle sources. And then for the performance of the chain to be able to handle that.
Cool. Okay, that's exciting. Um, okay, and then do you want to talk about? I know we talked about it a little bit a couple weeks ago, but do you want to talk about the Stride integration, liquid staking with dYdX, and maybe your thoughts on it so far?
Yeah, so this is something that I'm a little less involved with, but Stride has basically built a liquid staking token on top of the dYdX token slash chain that's been live for a little while now. I haven't seen the numbers on this in a few days, but I think the adoption of this is going pretty well. This is likely something that we're going to be developing into the front end as well. So directly on the dYdX platform, you'll be able to really easily stake your dYdX tokens just through the interface rather than kind of having to go to a third party to be able to do that. Of course, it'll be still enabled on third parties, but putting that in the product, I think, is really important as well. So this is something that liquid staking in general is something that I think is really exciting for users because it just makes the entire experience around staking a lot easier. So all you have to do is deposit into the liquid staking pool, and then your tokens are automatically staked. There's no kind of windows for unlocking the token, the stake token, or anything like that, and you still get really similar economics. So yeah, that's something that's been really exciting. It was really exciting to see Stride come up, and yeah, we didn't even like work that closely with them or anything, and they just built the liquid staking stuff on top of the platform, and that's really what we're looking for, right? And that's the big advantage we have now with the dYdX chain because everything is fully decentralized. It does really enable these third-party teams to come and build on the software and offer their own product. So I think this is a great example.
Totally. I guess along those lines, are there any things you can think of right now that you think would be really cool for other teams or projects to try building on dYdX?
So yeah, I mean, I think there are some things. This still isn't something that we're hugely focused on for the project in general. I think it will become a much bigger thing over time, like in a year or two from now. In terms of things that make sense to build on top right now, I think it's mostly just experimenting with the end user flow around the product. Like, could somebody build an affiliate program on top of the platform? Could somebody build a product like trading competitions on top of the product? Yeah, absolutely. That stuff can be built. And I think there can potentially be good economics around offering some of those products. So whether it's through a grant or through actually building a business on top, I think those are some early examples of things that are actually useful for the platform overall and for traders that can be built in a third party way.
Cool. Yeah. Okay, so we have two more questions. They're a little bit more broad. So, what do you think is going to kick off the next bull cycle, or slash, what do you think is kind of the most interesting use case for crypto that's emerging right now?
So this one I have a little less conviction on than the stuff that's going on directly within dYdX. But if you're asking my opinion, one of the things I'm excited about is social in crypto, and especially making social financialized. So I think friend tech was a good example of that. Everything in crypto goes through these hype cycles like friend tech, where it becomes really popular and then less so a little bit over time. But I think that was a really good early test of how this market can operate long term in social finance. So I'm excited about that one. And I think it's just a really big continuation of this trend I've seen a while in crypto, where things become more financialized over time. And as orders of magnitude, more things become tradable, then it enables just new types of things to be traded that you wouldn't have thought of trading before. So the first things that were traded in crypto were fairly obvious, like the assets themselves, and that's more similar to what you see in traditional finance. I think NFTs were a really good example of a continuation of this trend, where now because the blockchain had capacity for an order of magnitude, like 10,000, 100,000 assets to be listed instead of just hundreds, then people realize that trading images or NFTs becomes really popular. And I think once an order of magnitude, like now you can trade millions or tens of millions of types of things on the blockchain, then the next example of that seems plausible to me right now is like, okay, well, what if you could just trade people or profiles or a piece of content or that sort of thing? So that's something I'm personally excited about.
Yeah, totally. And then obviously you don't need to go into too many details if it's in the works, but on the project roadmap, I know that there was, a little bit of a mention of social integration, social features. So what are you thinking about that for dYdX?
Yeah. So for dYdX, I think on the social side, first of all, this isn't something that's the highest priority right now. There's really big things that we need to do on the core product, and then just enabling permissionless markets is a big focus. But probably 6 to 18 months from now, I do think social will become a bigger thing. And for a platform like dYdX, obviously dYdX is focused on more advanced or professional traders. But I do really think there's an opportunity to lean into how transparent trading is in crypto. And I think that has positives and negatives, like everything. But there are certain people and certain classes of traders that really like that and really want to lean into that. So, whether you could just make it really easy to see the activity of anybody on the platform, whether you make it really easy to have leaderboards or have things like you know who these traders are, or people can kind of flex on each other as they're making or losing money, that sort of thing. So I do really think that's something that's core to crypto, and just building a great product around that. Not that there's any particular idea that's super novel here, but just building a really high quality trading experience that's tightly integrated with social features and leverages the huge transparency that you get out of DeFi. Like all this information just literally is public, right? It's on the blockchain. You can just see what any address is doing. So we should just lean into that and make that really accessible in the product and surrounding tools as well.
Cool. Yeah, I love that. I think a leaderboard would be really fun just to kind of, I don't know, spur some competition.
Mhm.
Maybe you could do like events and whatever. Cool. Okay, so our final question. I know we're kind of running up on time. Um, I know the answer to this, but is dYdX hiring for any positions? And then if so, what are they? And what are some things that potential candidates can do to increase their chances of working at dYdX?
Definitely, we are, and we've continued to hire throughout all crypto cycles, so that continues to be a thing. we're certainly hiring on the engineering side. That's something that's pretty evergreen, both for back end, front end, and mobile engineers. So check out our website, dYdX.exchange, if you'd like to see some of those roles. A few others on the top of my head. We're hiring a technical writer, a head of people and talent. And I think those are the major things right now. So yeah, if you want to check out our website, I personally wrote a Notion doc that's public as well. You can see on the website about what it's like to work at dYdX, and hopefully that's a good amount of transparency for being able to tell. If you'd like to increase your chances of working at dYdX, I mean, really, it's just something that varies based on the role, but we do look for people that are both excellent and that we really want to work with. We care a lot about the culture at dYdX. So if it's an engineering role, kind of the standard things of practicing coding interviews, that kind of stuff. But yeah, definitely check out some of our roles if you're interested.
Okay, cool. Well, yes, I hope people in the audience apply. Open roles, great place to work. And that's all the questions we have for today. So, Antonio, thank you so much for joining as always. And to our audience, thank you for asking questions and tuning in. I'm looking forward to the next one.
Awesome. Thanks, Kenzie.